joy and peace for people all around the world, and of course within Pakistan as well. And now that the new year has ushered in, that is the hope. I think the year is off to a great start, and we hope that, of course, that also translates into people throughout our country and, of course, in the world as well. Two very important topics to discuss in the show. One concerning our health, a very important factor that perhaps is not being taken as seriously as it should. The fifth wave of the coronavirus, the new variant called Omicron, has begun in Pakistan. The NCOC earlier today held a meeting with reference to what needs to be done, the strategies that need to be devised in order to deal with this new wave of coronavirus. A lot of it also, of course, depends on the same measures that were discussed when the outbreak actually began, with reference to social distancing, wearing of masks and avoiding contact, and, of course, vaccinating. All of these measures are still important today. We'll discuss as to what the government plans to be doing in terms of its obligatory inoculation regime, how it plans to go forward with reference to bringing a lot of other people on board the vaccination regime, and then, of course, to deal with this particular variant as well. We'll discuss how this differs from other variants in the past and what the public needs to be doing about this. So we'll discuss this in further detail. Of course, the seriousness that we need from the public is also an important factor that we'll take a look at. The second is with reference to international relations, what's going on around the world. We know that the India-China relations have had a standoff since May last year. We've seen that there has been troops build-up at the line of actual control, and then, of course, the infrastructure build-up has also existed. Just recently, we also know that a new bridge is being developed on the Chinese side at the Pangong Tso Lake, and this bridge aims to shorten the gap and to fast-track the movement of troops and deployment of other equipment at the border, with, of course, the threat from the Indian side to counter that. This, of course, is happening not just on the Chinese side; it's also been going on in the Indian side as well, and we've seen this infrastructure build-up happening on both parts of the border. What really is the future of the relations between India and China? How far are such infrastructure build-ups going to continue? Are there going to be other interactions, as we've seen in the past, back in August as well? What is happening at the line of actual control, and what the new year would also bring in terms of its relations? And then, of course, the border itself. These issues will be discussed in further detail in the show today. As usual, we've been joined by Mr. Farrukh Pitafi and also by Mr. Raja Faisal, who wasn't with us in the last show. And I hope you're feeling better now, Faisal. Thank you for joining us.
Happy New Year. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. We actually did wish you on air. I don't know if you watched the show. Twice, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for that.
We did miss you. And
but you didn't answer her. Are you feeling better?
I'm brilliant now.
Right. I asked because I'm not.
And Farrukh, we hope you get well soon as well.
You.
And Farrukh, Faisal actually did bring candies for New Year. I don't know if you got to have some, but
got late.
Perhaps after the show. Let me also introduce our very respected guest for the first segment, which is going to be with regards to the fifth wave of coronavirus. We have been joined by Dr. Numan Zafar, who's an internal medical consultant. Thank you very much for joining us on the debate. Dr. Numan, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you very well. Yes.
Great. Thank you for joining us on the debate. Dr. Numan, I'll start off with you, of course. When we talk about the new wave of coronavirus, of course, Omicron is something that is now spreading all over the world and has started to spread in Pakistan as well. Let us first talk about the understanding of this particular variant in terms of its transmissibility, in terms of how infectious it is, and in terms of the intensity of this particular variant of the virus.
So, Omicron right now, what we are seeing is like highly transmissible. And here in Orlando, I'm in Orlando, Florida area, extreme amount of infection is going on. Reported cases somewhere around 80,000. Even these are those people who are getting tested. A lot of people are not able to even get tested because there's not enough tests available. So highly transmissible, but one good part is people are not getting too much sick, especially the people who are vaccinated. The people who are unvaccinated, they are getting admitted. But the problem is when you have a lot of infection, when you have a lot of patients with infection, then there will be some patients or will be number of patients who are hospitalized, they are actually even higher than when you have Delta or the other variants, which were not highly transmissible like this. So that's the issue down the road, and people have to be careful about it. That means we don't have to let our guard down, because if we think, oh, it's just like a mild infection. It is mild, but again, not everybody is getting a mild infection. I have even friends who are vaccinated who have actually even a booster, so 3 doses of Pfizer, and they end up in the hospital a few days ago. So even with 3 doses, you can end up in the hospital. That we have to be careful.
Right.
Yes,
right.
Farrukh.
Dr. Saab, since you are talking about how easy it is to transmit this variant, let me ask you, what are the most vulnerable ages in it? Because there has been, and we have been following the Western debate on whether the children and the young people are prone to it or not. And secondly, when you are talking about this, let me also ask you, the government's decision, government of Pakistan's decision to open vaccination for people over 30 regarding the booster. So is it going to control whatever is going on right now?
I hope, but I think the point is transmissibility is so high. A lot of kids are getting sick. Right now in our Pakistani community and in Orlando, there are a lot of homes and houses are like sick. Their kids are sick. The middle-aged people are sick. The older age people, they're like, it is affecting everybody. It's not like the original COVID strain, when it started, that was only older people were more vulnerable. Kids were not getting it. The kids are getting it too. So booster is the way right now. In my opinion, they should have brought.
We seem to have lost our connection with Dr. Numan Zafar. We'll try and establish our contact once again. Of course, an important point to remember is that this particular variant is, as before as well, affecting people from all ages, and no one can imagine the kind of effect the virus is going to have on them. So the important factor, of course, is to get vaccinated, and if you haven't done it already, get the first dose as well, and then, of course, the booster as well. With regards to how the nation or the world is responding to COVID now, Faisal, do you think that people perhaps are not taking this particular variant as seriously? As Dr. Numan was mentioning, it's not as intense. Does that mean that people are not really taking the precautions that they need to?
I think, Sana, it is more to do with the psychological factor, and I think most of the people, they have psychologically started accepting it. And whatever the variants are, they will be accepting it. But to me, I think it is very important that the governments should play their role. And of course, the steps which were taken in past when we saw that COVID-19 initially appeared, I think same kind of steps, if not the same, then at least somewhere down the line, the steps must be taken. And especially, earlier you were talking about vulnerable ages. To me, I think we still have kids in the schools, and we must be worried about that as well. We know that Pakistan brilliantly coped with COVID-19, and even the World Health Organization, it hailed Pakistan's steps, and I think once again Pakistan needs to play its role. And if we look at the Omicron, right now, as earlier Farrukh was mentioning about the booster above 30, there is another thing I wanted to mention. Only those above 30s who hadn't had the second dose in last 6 months. So I think the ones who had recently done their, like I had 3 months ago, I think 3 months ago I had both of my AstraZenecas done. I am not going to get a booster
for another 3 months, right?
Yeah, for another 3 months.
Yeah,
but I think government is playing its role, and government needs to rectify that, especially when it comes to the travel restrictions as well.
Right, that is important. Dr. Saab is back with us, Sana.
Yes, and the important factor that I also want to stress upon is when we talk about the different steps that the government needs to take, there is of course a lot of responsibility on the public as well, on the individual as well. And we see there's so many different kinds of responses coming forward. Dr. Numan, it seems that something which should have been very easy to reason with is not that simple even now. 2 years into the pandemic?
One important thing I do want to mention that I check my antibodies level every month, just my own research. So even after 8 months of to second dose, I had about like 400 units per ml of antibodies. So after I got the booster, the antibodies was boosted more than 2,600 units per ml, and that's the reason. After at least 6 months, they're recommending a booster. And when you have enough amount of antibodies, even if it's a highly mutated strain, you still have enough amount of antibodies in your mucosal membrane, we say, like in the nose and the mouth, that once you get the virus, it will eventually kill it because you have enough amount of antibodies. That's why after 6 months, I totally agree with the recommendation that we should get a booster. But maybe within 6 months, I don't think we need it. But after six
Okay.
months, definitely, the booster will help because you will have enough amount of antibodies. But again, the people have to understand it's a milder disease, but the point is too many people will get sick that eventually you have too many people admitted in the hospital, which will actually put strain on the hospital system.
Right. Dr. Saab, you are a doctor by virtue of that. You're also a scientist. Let me ask you about the reasons behind these variants and so many that are coming. On one side, that is an issue. On the other, because Sana also brought it up, the kind of conspiracy theories that continue in the West. And West has more access to information. In Pakistan, there becomes a big problem regarding herd immunity and other things. When do you think, if once so many people are vaccinated, these variants will stop coming?
The normal recommendations from epidemiologists, about 70 to 80% people, either they have antibodies through vaccination or through infection. That's called herd immunity. So we haven't reached there. The problem is when this virus is replicating among the people who are sick, and once there is an error, that error is actually a new variant. So once you have enough amount of people getting infection, and then their infection is multiplying every day, and you have an error, and error happens, and that actually becomes a variant. So that's why we're getting new and new variants every 3 to 6 months. We get a beta, we get a delta, we get Omicron, and now I hope not. But so the main thing is to stop this new variants. We have to get people vaccinated. Even in United States, we have the same trouble. There is two group of people. One people are getting vaccinated, like me or most of the patients, but there are about 40% people who just doesn't believe in vaccination. And conspiracy theories on internet that this is going to put a chip on them, this is going to control and this. That's very sad what happened, but I think this is happening almost every country in the world, that we have two group of people. One is towards the vaccination and one is against. I think we have to try to convince as much as we can, and that's what we are doing right now, that the vaccine, there might be some side effects from vaccine, but if you compare this with the infection and there's a risk of dying or getting on ventilator, even if people don't die, I have a lot of patients who are young, they didn't get the vaccine and they had the COVID. Even after a year, their lungs are damaged, their difficulty walking, they have like a long-term COVID side effects. And these people need to understand.
Right. Dr. Saab, you just said that there might be some side effects from the vaccine. Can you elaborate on that?
Okay, so most of the side effects are very mild. Headache, you get muscle aches, you can get like arm pain, and you had a fever for a couple of days. So majority of the people are like this. There are some patients who have maybe like a blurry vision for like few days or maybe a few weeks, and then smell. I myself, honestly, my smell is increased, not decreased, is increased for a couple of months. And but again, that was, if I compare this with the disease as compared to this, side effects, there is no comparison. I can have side effects for a few days or maybe a couple of weeks, which are even milder. There's not very severe. Some people have a little bit more severe side effect, but the point is risk versus risk. So in field of medicine, you actually say, when I give you medication, for example, I give a medication for cholesterol, it can affect your liver. So the question is, you weigh the risk versus benefit. So the benefit of having a cholesterol pill, same thing, the benefit of having a vaccine, preventing death or damage to the lungs through the virus, is much higher than the risk of side effects. So
Right.
everything is
And Dr.
risk
Numan,
versus benefit.
right now, since it's cold in Pakistan, a lot of people, of course, are experiencing the seasonal flu, and because of that, and because Omicron is perhaps a milder version of coronavirus, a lot of the lines are now blurred, and people seem to be assuming, without testing, that they do not have COVID and they do not have the Omicron variant. What sort of push can we give to the people in terms of actually deciding on getting tested? Should there be more tests done? Should there be more people quarantining themselves, isolating themselves with each other? What sort of measure can we stress the most? Because people seem to be not wanting to either go for tests that frequently or even isolating themselves.
I mean, that's the reason we have all this pandemic going on, because people who have either a milder infection or asymptomatic, they don't test and they don't isolate themselves, and that's why they spread it. And you go for a wedding, and you're sitting in a barat, or you're sitting in Mindi, and it spreads out everywhere. So I understand it's very difficult with the flu versus a regular flu or regular common cold, which is like a rhinovirus, or even a coronavirus type 1 and type 2. These are milder, very cold. We all get it. The first two COVID are like coronas, not COVID. So it's very difficult until unless if you have very specific symptoms, like a loss of smell, taste, that's definitely is COVID-19. But for regular corona or regular rhinovirus, which is common cold virus, or influenza virus, which is flu, this is very difficult to differentiate if you have a milder symptoms. The only way, honestly, to know is getting tested. If you are test positive, obviously you isolate yourself.
Right. Very
Yes,
quickly,
Farrukh.
Dr. Saab, when you were talking about side effects, I was really glad that you explained it, because whatever you were saying does not actually compare with what Alex Jones and Joe Rogan and people like that are actually spreading. But I just wanted to know, when you're talking about all these matters, is there a possibility of both these viruses actually converging at some point? Coronavirus and this rhinovirus that is regular? Because earlier we kept on hearing that Omicron might be doing that sort of a thing as well.
Yes. We have reports actually, and very easy. So what happens is, if you get influenza A and B, which we call flu, your immune system is already down. Now you get encounter with somebody who has like Omicron, you can get actually both. So there is definitely possibility. If you are sick, your immune system is already down, you can get both. And that's like a double bummer. So, that's why the only way to protect yourself is, one, prevention. Obviously, mask, sanitizer, staying, we do social distancing, which is especially in the bigger events like these
Sure,
weddings.
of course. Yes, Faisal, you have a question.
Yeah. Dr. Noman, I just wanted to know, as you were mentioning that, of course, a person, if not developed the antibodies, then their body, of course, you were mentioning, what was it, it was
Immunity?
The immunity.
Yeah.
How to increase the immunity if we have like people relying on their own daily things, their own daily food. Me being someone who has always stayed away from the medicine of medical things, what should we do? What should a common man in Pakistan do to eat something and get it high?
See, the point is, we say like vitamin C and citrus fruit and stuff, they increase immunity. But the problem is, you need a very specific immunity. What does immunity mean? Immunity means there are a lot of things in immunity. But if we just focus, you need antibodies against the virus, which will actually block the virus. So the real scientific way is to get the vaccine. You can have an exercise, you can eat like healthy stuff, you can have multivitamins, but again, that's not going to give you, if somebody is naive means they don't have antibodies against the specific virus. If you don't have antibodies against the spike protein, this virus, if it attacks you, it's going to go in the body and it's going to multiply. So you need to stop that multiplication. You can still be exposed if you have antibodies. I've been exposed twice. I was sick for about 8 hours. One time I was sick for about 6 hours, and one time I was 8 hours. You really cannot get up at all, and the fight between the virus and antibodies going on. As soon as all the virus goes up, all of a sudden you feel like magic, that you just feel normal. And that actually explains that the vaccine works. So if you ask me
Right.
honestly, if you really want like immunity against this virus specifically, I mean, general
Right.
immunity is different. General immunity is
Right.
exercise.
Dr. Sir, very quickly, before you go, since you actually brought up the matter of loss of sense of smell, earlier when this pandemic started, we were told that it actually shows that there is going to be some neurological damage to the body as well. Can you explain now, because there has been quite some time, what causes that and what is the solution?
Okay, so olfactory nerve is the nerve which actually you do the smell somehow the other. I mean, actually the influenza also does it. I have patients I've seen before COVID that they had in flu. Flu means regular, real influenza, and they lost their smell. So somehow the other, this virus damages the nerve which actually you use for the smell. Some people recover. There is a treatment which is like more like there are four smells we use, like a citrus smell. There is like a flower smell. There are four different smells you use every day, 3 to 4 times, 3 to 5 times a day for 5 minutes. And some people will recover. Some people will take time, and there are people who don't recover. So first of all, that's why our first goal is not to get it. If we get it and we lost the taste of smell, taste will come back and whenever it's want. But the smell, you can do like a smell treatment. There are four different smells you can use. But again, because it damages the nerve, that's why it causes it.
Sure. Dr. Numan, when earlier you were discussing the long-term effects that, of course, coronavirus can have on patients, now that we're 2 years into the pandemic, have we established any correlation between some specific effects that exist in the long term? Because there were many psychological impacts, there were physiological impacts, even 6 months or a year down the line with COVID patients. Do we have specific effects that we can now directly relate to COVID patients?
This is the only virus in the world which has so many different. So people have kidney failure, other have like stroke, and other have stroke in the eyes and they are blind. And there are people who have lung damage. They have people who have liver damage. So this virus has, I have never seen, I'm doing medicine for 23 years. I've never seen anything like this, that which there is a virus which affects liver only or a kidney only or a lungs, but this is a combined thing which can affect anything of anyone. That's the reason we cannot pinpoint. But again, there are people who have very mild symptoms. There are young people I've seen, 25 years of age, who had a lung damage and they were very healthy, no health issues. And after a year, it's even difficult for them to walk 10 feet. So what we know so far, and I hope that comes out too, that it depends upon the genetic makeup. There are, so far they found 6 genes. So those people who have underexpression or overexpression of some of the genes, so who get a very severe COVID. These people, what happens is their inflammatory response genes are very high. So their response to the COVID virus is very high. So they get a very high inflammation. And there is a gene which actually produces TNF, tumor necrosis factors. And these, they have lower amount of that genes, or they produce less. So they have a less fighting capability, but they have more inflammation capability. So these people will actually have severe COVID. There is a company who brought these tests that you can actually do your own DNA test, and actually you're going to get a severe COVID or a milder. But I don't know that.
Oh, wow.
That was never, people never did it because, I don't know, the government stopped it because it's going to cause more panic. But I think with the next few years, definitely we'll know exactly that why some people are getting so severe disease and why we're not. And most likely this is the genetic makeup.
Right, of course, and there's so much more that we can still learn. Thank you very much, Dr. Numan, for being with us in the show and enlightening us with so much detail. Of course, all of this information needs to be understood by people all around the world, especially within our country as well, with regards to the measures that we know to be true in terms of protecting us from this deadly disease, because we don't know how our body is going to react to the virus. So it's important for us to keep maintaining social distance, avoid unnecessary contact, of course, wear masks, and get vaccinated. These are the measures that we know for sure to be effective. So these are the ones we should be taking in. Now it's time to move on to our next segment, which of course is with regards to the relationship between India and China. We've seen the line of actual control, witnessing tensions earlier as well. And of course, infrastructure buildup is also an important factor. Let's first take a look at the package reported being made by our team, and we'll get back with the details.
The 3,500-kilometer long border between India and China stretches very difficult terrain. This disputed border has been a bone of contention between the two countries, leading to a war in 1962 and repeated escalations in which India has struggled to gain an advantage. The Dispang area and the Pangong Sao Lake have held prime geostrategic importance in this regard. China's People Liberation Army has started building a bridge over the Pangong Sao on its territory in Farrukh. The bridge is set to shorten nearly 200 kilometers of distance to 40 to 50 kilometers from Farrukh to the southern banks to counter any possible Indian Army operations. PLA aims to build roads accessing the bridge to have multiple routes for faster deployment of soldiers and material. This need has defined China's posture in the region.
And of course, this is an important development, and we will going to be discussing this in further detail with regards to how it's going to actually impact the relationship between the two countries and what seems to be the future strategy and how to diffuse these tensions and whether or not both the countries are actually moving in that direction. Faisal, when we take a look at the situation at the line of actual control, we see that border tensions have been on the rise since May 2020. The infrastructure build-up is an important factor in this as well, because of course it is there to counter threats, to fast track the deployment of troops and other equipment. When we look at this new construction of the bridge on Pangong Sao Lake, this of course from the Chinese side is happening with reference to what happened in August 2020. Do you think that this is sort of a remedial measure that the Chinese side is taking?
Yes, Sana, obviously we saw a build-up of the Chinese side. Chinese army is building up there because they did not come there to go back immediately. You know, they want to build, they want a build-up there. And remember, we watched a movie, what was it, Three Idiots or, Three Idiots. And we saw the same lake where they are going to build a bridge now, Pangong Lake. And this is the very lake, and next time if somebody wants to, I guess, see this lake without all of the things which are being done by Chinese army there, they only can watch it in that movie.
There are actually other
and
movies
otherwise
as well.
they can't. And problem here is that, you know, China kept on saying that this land belongs to us, and they did what they were supposed to do and what seems right to them to do. And that's what they've done. And India can never stop them. And this is why India, failing 14 times in the talks, now they know they can't do anything about it. And they will, you know, continue building up from this side as well. But on the other side, of course, they know the Chinese buildup is so enormous and so technically advanced that they can't match it. They can't match it. What they can do is they can, you know, carry on building up their own tanks and their own planes and their swarms, and they can create a sort of deterrence for Chinese. But of course, Chinese won't go back like this, and they will keep on using the diplomatic sort of ways to do it, and trying the Chinese to, you know, sit on the table and talk to them. But of course, Chinese won't go from there. This is not only about the Eastern Ladakh. It is about, you know, that there are certain places, certain points in Arunachal Pradesh where Chinese army is already advancing. And a couple of points where India actually stopped them. They said, why are you stopping us? This is our land. This belongs to us. That's why we are here. And these Indian officers, they are, you know, talking to them. No, it does not belong to you. But they say, no, it belongs to us. So if they have any courage, I must say, if they have any courage, they need to stop them. Of course, they can't stop them. And that's why Chinese are coming forward. And Chinese want to challenge their rate over there.
Right. Let's also introduce two of our guests. Farrukh, let me just introduce our guests
very quickly,
in the show.
Do you want them to fight? Okay. Now you can say whatever you want to.
Thank you very much. Let us introduce international and defense strategic analyst and Indian Army veteran, Shailendra Singh, who's joined us on the debate. Thank you very much for being a part of the show. We've also been joined by former Ambassador Jana, Mr. Masood Khalid. Thank you very much for joining us on the debate and being part of this discussion. I'll start with you, Mr. Shailendra Singh. When we speak about the situation at the line of actual control, these tensions, of course, have been on the rise for a while now. And we see that efforts for dialogue seem to be failing. When we look at the kind of build-up that exists, the infrastructure build-up that is going on both sides, and the failure of the talks, what do you see proceeding forward? What needs to be done to diffuse the tensions? Will this status quo just continue? The build-up and the deterrence measures taken from both sides continue? That is going to be the way it's going to, because it's been like that in the past as well. Is that how it's going to be in the future as well?
Allow me to say this. This is such a sensitive topic that it needs to be dealt very responsibly. We'll not make any irrelevant statements or sweeping statements or any kind of blame game. I'll tackle your points one by one. You are saying that the failure of talks in international diplomacy, having 14 rounds of talk, is called as phenomenal success. Anybody who's known diplomacy a little bit will appreciate that. If it was a failure of talk, how did you reach the 14th stage?
But has there been any progress?
Madam, I will request you, if you can allow me to complete my sentence,
sure.
And then raise your objection, I will be able to comprehend it better.
Go ahead.
Maybe my full answer may satisfy you a little bit.
All right.
So I am only commenting on the diplomacy and the failure of talk as what is perceived by you. You need to grow up. You need to mature up to understand that 14 rounds of talk between two country armies doesn't take place normally. It's a phenomenal success, I'll say. It's a phenomenal hope that yes, and you have seen that there have been.
Sorry, sir. You can complete your thought. I'm not going to stop you. But did you ask us to grow up right now?
Oh, I am only asking the comment that it's a failure.
Right, sir, you're not the first Indian guest who actually comes on our television and instructs us how to actually speak and whether we should be filtering ourselves. So I will just request you, and you are our honorable guest, continue your point, but don't insult your hosts. Please go ahead.
No, it is not an insult. It's not an insult.
Sir, I can use that kind of language if it is not
what
insult.
You are saying.
Would you kindly also grow up, sir?
To say, when it comes to international diplomacy, you don't ever insult anybody. It's an insult to the international community, including China and India. If you perceive 14 rounds of talk as a failure, this is where I went. This is where I'm saying, please be more responsible to take a more considered view that what is happening around you. Now, coming to this point regarding Pangangso, I only hope somebody out of you knows the Pangangso Lake, the dispute between us and China. If there is somebody who's there, only then it will be worthwhile to talk about it. Otherwise, I will be narrating something because I might be the only person who has physically patrolled from finger 3 to right up to finger 8 and back. So if we have somebody who can come with me step by step, I think we will be able to resolve it in a much better way. Where is this bridge?
Right, let me also welcome in the discussion Mr. Masood Khalid and ask him the question with regards to the talks that have been going on. You've been a former ambassador to China. Do you think that the talks so far have been successful?
Thank you very much. Well, I think continuing to talk is a good thing to resolve issues which are ticklish and which are complicated and which have a historical background. You see, this dispute between India and China goes way back into history, and there have been attempts in the past in 60s between Prime Minister Nehru and Premier Chou En-lai to resolve this issue. In fact, there were marathon sessions between them, but somehow this issue could not be resolved. Now, then we saw in 1967, there was a clash, and before that in 1962. So it was after nearly, 50 years that this clash in Galvan Valley took place, a fierce clash. This shows that both sides have not been able to come around to a point of convergence where they narrow down their differences. So these talks between the military sides is all right, and they can continue with a view to resolve these issues. But as I said, these are complicated issues, and I think there is a wide divergence of opinion and perception as to where each one's claim lies, So I think attempts have been made, as I said in the past, but there is a sense of frustration, I believe, in China, that despite this, there is a political mechanism also between, I'm not talking of the military side talks. There's a political mechanism, and I believe 21 rounds or 22 rounds have taken place already without any concrete outcome. So kind of frustration has set in China that despite their best efforts in the 60s, and that China, having been successful in concluding border treaties with its other neighbors, has somehow not succeeded in concluding a similar treaty with India, which is a big neighbor, and with which China, I think, wants to develop cordial relations, good economic linkages. So I think that is the frustration. So right now,
Ambassador Sahab, since you were talking about this frustration that might be there, when you look at the recent development, Ambassador Sahab, it seems that August 5 developments for India, whatever it did, bifurcating Indian occupied Kashmir into two sections and then actually absorbing it, it might have created all of this. Do you think that there is a reset button? If these are taken back, there might be that this militarized zone can be demilitarized?
Yes, India's action of August 2019 was, of course, totally illegal, against international law, against United Nations Security Council resolutions, and that agitated Pakistan, justifiably so, and our stance very well. But China also was upset when Ladakh was made into a union territory. So, this has been a dispute, and India was insensitive to these concerns of two neighbors, Pakistan and China, and unilaterally took this action. And over and above whatever is going on in Indian occupied Kashmir, I am not saying that because I am speaking from a Pakistani podium, but I mean there is sufficient evidence now and documentation that a lot of repression is going on in Kashmir. So obviously these steps by India have not helped to create a congenial atmosphere in South Asia and peace and stability in South Asia have been jeopardized. Well, Pakistan's position is very clear. We have said that we do not accept, we reject these decisions of the Indian government, and we are prepared to have dialogue with India and to have normalcy in relations. We are prepared to go back to the negotiating table if India revokes these actions.
Yes, Colonel Shailendra, namaste, pranam from Pakistan, Raja Faisal here. I know for the fact that while you were serving Indian Army as a captain, you served in the 14 Corps, and you served this very place where Galwan Durgatna took place, as everyone calls it. Sir, I wanted to know that in the current situations, my colleagues earlier, they were mentioning just because of one reason that the talks failed for 14 times. Because if we look at the current situation, the current steps which are being taken by the Chinese PLA, they are an evidence itself that, the talks will always fail. And I just wanted to know, sir, looking at the build-up from the Chinese side, and your side, do you think that your side's build-up is enough to match or enough to stop the Chinese from their ambitions?
Raja Saab, Jai Hind. You have been always a frank man with the correct data. I'll go by that first comment, if you can allow me, that what India did with 370 was internationally or United Nation wise not acceptable or wrong or right, whichever way. The United Nation never said so. The international community also never said so. So allow me to assure you that we are able to educate the international community very well that what is the correct legal situation. Whether we call yours as POK, you call ours as IOK and all that, as what the Honorable Ambassador said it so well, that let us rise above only the podium of either Pakistan or India. We might as well go by facts and figures. If India has done something so wrong, do you think Pakistan and China would have left us? Had we gone totally against the United Nations, would they ignore it? The way international community, including your so-called erstwhile best friend, US, has openly supported, because that is one power which is unfortunately always considered कि उन्होंने अगर कुछ कहा है तो वो भगवान का कहना हो जाता है. Even they didn't say anything against. So that should settle the international part. I think we fought or we did our diplomacy well by educating everybody. Now coming to your specific question, what you are asking, whether anything done by China is to be matched by me. No, it doesn't have to. Why should it be? I will not match it. I will only take things the way they are with me. If you mean to say that tomorrow, if China brings in, let's say, 1,000 aircrafts at a particular air base of theirs, so I also have to match it by 1,000? No. I could be going above 1,000. I could be going lower than 1,000. That is my strategy. That is my country's vision, how we can fight. That will be my policy. That will be my tactical orchestrating the battlefield in such a way that I feel that, yes, I can handle this situation. So as far as matching is concerned, I think...
When we speak about matching it, of course, we mean, that is what we mean. We don't mean, of course, in terms of the exact number or the exact equipment. Of course, the idea is to be able to match the kind of strength or to be able to deter the threat over there. Is that even possible from the Indian side was the question. I'd also like to add to that, of course, when we talk about earlier responses, Pakistan has actually been responding as a responsible state with regards to what has been going on. And you talked about how India has been rising up to the occasion. Can we really say that in terms of what is going on within India, the kind of issues that minorities within India themselves are facing? Can we actually call India a responsible, democratic, diplomatic state that can get a seat at the table and be able to negotiate in terms of international norms, international politics, the way, of course, different nations in the world work? Is India really at that position?
So I'll come to that question immediately after I answer your first. Deterrence. You said whether India can create such a deterrence. Don't you think, sir? Don't you think, madam? India has already created that deterrence. Because if at all, as Raja Sahab has very correctly said, if the China is so mighty, why is it not doing something? Why it has not attacked even once? That there is a credible deterrence. There is an apprehension, I'm just saying apprehension with China, that the losses to them will be so prohibitive that they will not be able to afford it.
Right.
Otherwise, it's very simple. It's very simple
I
for
get
them.
that you have to actually
Just
get it
carry
out
on
of your
function
system.
regardless.
But allow me to actually ask you a follow-up question, because earlier you talked about
Kashmir. You think China
right?
is one of those tolerant country that he will let us just like that go? So I think
Colonel
the
Singh, can you hear me?
Is very, very clear.
Sir, can you hear me? Right. Earlier, you said that India has educated, quote unquote, the world about what it has done in Kashmir, and that's why the world is not reacting. Regardless of that, I think a person who has actually fought wars and who has experience of these theaters, you must be, informed enough to know that what caused this skirmish of late, this kind of confrontation. It dates back to August 5. So whether it is de facto acceptance or de jure status, something else, but at this moment, this seems to be the biggest problem, that India unilaterally changed the status quo. If there is a reversal, don't you think that it will kill two birds with one stone? That you pacify China, you build diplomacy and bridges, and you also start negotiating with Pakistan as well?
Good question.
I don't think I don't think there is a requirement right now to combine these three issues. One is negotiate with Pakistan. No, we don't have to. The both countries are capable to put our points. If they can get solved, yes. Otherwise, we'll continue to discuss. That discussion has come to a small setback, oblique a stop. It is not happening for quite some time. The reasons could be anything, but we have been talking earlier. And by the
Right,
way,
let me also include Mr. Masood Khalid in the
Yeah,
discussion.
if I could ask him a
Yes,
question.
Faisal.
Pakistan not having talking terms, we have such a beautiful understanding between the both DAGMOs that
Colonel Shailendra,
fire.
Colonel Shailendra, if you allow me, I have a question from obviously Ambassador Masood. I just wanted to ask him, as Colonel Shailendra just highlighted earlier, that nobody has said anything, even including America, nobody has said anything to India what India has done. But Sir Ambassador Masood, I wanted to ask you, isn't it the fact that if India did not get any comments from any of the Western world, that has everything to do with India being a partner or frontline of America right now in US-China trade war, sir?
Well, I think you are right. It's a question of, the partnership which United States and India enjoy. And of course, this is power politics. But the fact that Indian action in Kashmir has been taken note of by international media, by International Human Rights Council at the United Nations, humanitarian organizations, and important NGOs, they have come out with their reports. Human Rights Council has come out with 2 reports on this illegal actions. So I don't think that's right to say that the international community has not taken cognizance of what has gone on in the occupied Kashmir. And well, I don't want to get into this debate whether the settled or not settled. It is very much on the statute books of the United Nations. United Nations Security Council resolutions are there, and they are very much alive and still relevant. So as far as United States position on this issue is concerned, US has been saying that this is for India and Pakistan to resolve the issue bilaterally. Okay, Pakistan is prepared to enter into meaningful and substantive discussion with India, but we don't find response from India. On the other hand, they have taken a series of measures which have vitiated the atmosphere in the region. It is unfortunate. I think it would be in the interest of peace, stability in South Asia, and it would also be in the interest of India itself to have good relationship with its neighbors, be it
Absolutely.
Pakistan
Thank you very
or
much,
China.
Mr. Masood Khalid. Khalid and Mr. Shailendra Singh for joining us.
Thank you very
and we
much.
hope that this is, of course, understood by the people in India and the government in India as well. That, of course, all we are saying is in their best interest as well. And it is going to be good for them if they actually act upon these decisions. We, of course, only hope for peace in the region, in the country, and in the world. And we hope that people can see the same for themselves as well. Thank you very much for joining the debate. Stay tuned.